Welcome and hello to another interview in our series of Meet Columban. This evening we're especially privileged because we have with us Father Tim Mulroy, who is our current society leader for the whole society. He is based in Hong Kong and we're very pleased to have you, Tim. Thank you very much for making yourself available for this particular interview.
Well, good evening, Trevor, and thank you for this opportunity to share with you and with our Columban friends and supporters a little bit about Columban mission across the globe, especially at this time.
Yeah, well, that's right. But maybe we'd like to introduce you a little bit. I mean, your accent is giving you away to some degree. So would you like to give us a little bit of background of, where you grew up and how you came to be a Columban?
I'm Tim Mulroy, and I'm from County Mayo in Ireland along the west coast. And I grew up there in the 1960s and 70s in a very traditional Catholic farming family. And as I was growing up, my mother was a major supporter of the different missionary groups like Columbans and several others. And so their magazines were constantly coming into our home. And as a teenager, I recall reading Columban Mission magazine and being very inspired by the stories I found there. And that's when the initial spark took off.
Right. So were you part of a larger family or?
Yeah, I'm one of 8.
Oh, okay.
I have 5 sisters and 2 brothers, and I'm number 6 in the family.
Okay.
Yeah, and at that time, Ireland was a very traditional Catholic country where my parents, grandparents, neighbors, school teachers, all of them were very devout Catholics.
Right.
So it was a very, how can I say, nurturing environment for anyone who had an interest in becoming a religious person.
Right, right. So you went off to the Columban Seminary, and then after ordination, what year were you ordained, Tim?
I was ordained in 1995.
Okay.
And but before that, as a seminarian, I had the opportunity to spend 2 years in Japan.
Ah, right.
And then I came back to Ireland to complete my seminary studies. And I was then asked if I wanted to go back to Japan or not. And I did want to go back. I was very happy to go back there. And so I spent the next 7 years in Japan.
Right. Oh, okay. Because we've had Columban missionaries working in Japan for a long time. I couldn't help thinking when you were describing your upbringing, how Catholic it was. That would have been a big contrast to what you were experienced in Japan, I'd imagine.
It was a total contrast from a community that was 99% Catholic in the west of Ireland back in the 1970s to a Catholic community in Japan that's considerably less than 1%.
Wow, wow.
And yet I found it a very worthwhile experience, and it was an eye-opener for me because it was really only after I went to Japan that I came to understand slowly what faith really means.
Yes.
In Ireland, everybody was Catholic.
Yeah.
Everybody had a lot of beliefs, but we didn't think too much about faith itself. But in Japan, it was the first time to meet people who didn't have faith in the way we understood it, at least. And then the privilege of accompanying some of them into the Catholic faith and seeing the transformation that came in their life.
Really?
Over a period of 1 or 2 years. For me, that was quite astonishing. I knew it wasn't due to my teaching ability or my competence in Japanese language. It was so clear to me that there was something else much more powerful at work in their lives during the catechumenate preparation program.
Right, right, okay.
And seeing how it changed their lives, seeing
Really?
how it gave them a new joy and a new sense of purpose. I had never experienced that in Ireland.
Right.
So that was an eye-opener to me as to how the Holy Spirit is at work and how the gift of faith is truly a gift. It's something that is not accomplished. That's not an achievement.
No, no.
The Holy Spirit gives it, and then we respond.
Right, right.
So it was really, it was a great privilege to see that before my own eyes.
And I suppose, you know, when you're talking about Japan and that sort of transformation, they weren't large numbers. But if I was thinking of Korea, where the Columbans are still working, they would have seemed to have had large numbers of people come to join the Catholic Church during our Columban time there.
Yes, in Japan, the numbers were very small and have remained very small. Less than 1% of the Japanese population is Christian.
Right.
But to me, that also was a blessing, because people became Christian or Catholic because they really wanted to.
Okay.
It wasn't because of somebody else's expectation or peer pressure. One really had to make a personal choice to become a Christian.
Yes, yes.
And so that led to a strong sense of commitment to the faith and a strong sense of ownership of one's faith life and journey. And I also felt that the Catholics or Christians in Japan, they were like the salt, you know, just a very small amount.
Right.
But being able to add flavor to the
Right.
wider dimensions of society in the workplace and schools and just in general. So to me, that actually was also one of the blessings of the number being small.
Right, right.
People had to really commit themselves to this way of life, and they had an enthusiasm that came from the fact that they themselves had decided to enter this path, and it wasn't the popular choice.
Right. No.
So I have found all of that very inspiring to see people sometimes in their 20s, sometimes in their 50s, sometimes in their 80s,
really,
and deciding to enter into the Christian path.
Right.
And then allowing that to transform their life was extraordinary to me.
And so, Tim, how many years did you work in Japan? How many years were you there?
About 7 years.
7? And then after that?
After that, I was asked if I would move to Chicago. At that time, we had an international seminary in Chicago.
Right.
And I was asked to go and live and mentor the seminarians in Chicago.
Okay.
The seminarians came there to study theology from our different mission countries, places like Peru and Chile and Fiji, Tonga, Korea, the Philippines. And so I spent a decade there in that community as a kind of mentor.
And I mean, one of the things that we know about living here in the new region of Oceania is that we have different cultures as part of this. If I make a trip to Fiji, I end up having to drink from the grog bowl as part of the culture. You got all those different cultures living with them in the one house. How did they all cope? Did they get their own food, or how did things work out there?
Well, you know, it was an experience for all of us to learn something about one another, about each other's culture, way of life, language, customs. But it was also a challenge to compromise, because when you have people from 5 or 6 different cultures living together, most of the time, we're not going to get what we want.
Right.
We're going to have to compromise. And 80% of the time, there's compromise involved in intercultural living.
Right, yes, yeah.
Especially when you have 5 or 6 different cultures. Yeah. And I think that in itself is a grace to learn the art of compromise, give and take, live and learn. You know, it stretches us considerably, But over time, one can sense the benefit of really appreciating different aspects of other people's lives and cultures, and seeing that while it's very different from mine, there's a giftedness in there. There's a blessing for me somewhere, and discovering that and helping others to discover that. Because as Columbans, our whole vocation is cross-cultural mission, working with people from other countries and cultures in different languages. So to me, there was no better opportunity than during our seminary years to practice what would be our future life, and to develop the skills and the confidence and make different mistakes and misunderstandings, but in the process come to a greater appreciation of the lives of people in other countries and cultures. And that's what, as Columbans, all of us, that's really at the heart of our vocation.
That's
to
right.
enter into other people's lives in another culture.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if we're living in our own country, our culture nowadays, the world has become a global village.
Yes.
So
yes.
we go down the street into the corner store, more likely than not, we will encounter somebody who is not from our own country or our own town,
Right.
And maybe have a different linguistic background, different religious background, different culture. So how do we engage people like that, even in our own countries now?
That's right. So I think, what you're saying there is that like our own experience has helped us kind of in terms of living this multicultural life. I mean, I think one of the other things that we have a couple of priorities, don't we, within the society at this stage, and you as the society leader, of course, are more aware of this than anyone. But one of the areas that we have is what we call interreligious dialogue, the meeting of the various big religions around the world, and sometimes it gives rise to conflict, and sometimes, people are trying to build a bit of understanding. Why did we pick on that? Can you just give us a little bit of an understanding of how we arrived at this as a priority for our lives as Columbans?
Well, I think it has been there right from the beginning, because when the first Columbans went to China 100 years ago, there was the realization that for the most part, the people around them were not going to become Christian or Catholic.
Right.
A small percentage might want to, but the vast majority would not.
Right.
And yet, it was very important for them, as it is for us, to learn how to relate to people of other religious traditions, understand that they are sincere in their convictions, understand that their way of life is often even exemplary,
right.
In terms of love of the divine, love of neighbor, respect for others. And so I think right from the beginning, the Columbans realized that the vast majority of people we encounter of other religious traditions, they're not going to become Catholic, but they are people of goodwill, and they want to live in peace with others and with us. And so I think there was that realization, we better try to get to understand them and not just make it one-way traffic, where it's the onus is on them to learn more about Christianity. We also, I think right from the beginning, felt we have a responsibility to understand their religious tradition, their way of life. Okay. And to see where God is at work with them and in and through their traditions.
And so, sorry, just coming through to today, what is the society doing in terms of interreligious dialogue? Where are they finding the challenges? Where are they finding any sort of breakthroughs? Well, it's, I think, just about in every corner of the globe now, we have people living together from different religious traditions. There's no part of the globe that's uniform in terms of belief. Right. And so I think everybody in every country is invited or challenged to become more aware
and develop a greater understanding and an appreciation of people of other religious traditions.
Right.
Now, as Columbans, we have a major emphasis on this aspect of our endeavors in places like Sydney, where Father Pat McInerney has the Columban Mission Center and a tremendous outreach to people of various religious traditions there in Sydney. But also in places like Korea, Columbans in Korea for a number of years have been actively engaged with dialogue, developing a greater understanding, better relationships with people from the Buddhist tradition.
Okay, yeah.
And also in Myanmar, we also have a growing interest and a commitment to outreach to Buddhism there.
Okay.
Now, side by side with that, we have a commitment to dialogue and to better developing deeper relationships and friendships with the Muslim people in Mindanao, in the southern part of the Philippines, and also in places like Pakistan, and where we have a Columban presence for more than 40 years. And it's an overwhelmingly Muslim society.
Right, that's right.
But also in places like Birmingham in England, we have quite a number of years trying in that multicultural, multi-religious environment of Birmingham in England, trying to foster greater friendships, relationships, mutual understanding, collaboration in the area of especially Christian-Muslim, the field of Christian-Muslim relationships.
Right, that's right. Tim, we don't have a lot more time, but I'd just like to reflect on the coronavirus. How has that sort of impacted the Columbans? You, I'm sure, as the leader, and will be very aware of what's happening with all the different parts of the world. Not just for the Columbans, but maybe even for the societies. Would you like to say something about that?
Well, there's no doubt about it that this coronavirus crisis is a scourge all across the globe. You know, it's impacting every single country where we have missions.
Right.
And it is presenting serious challenges everywhere. What we see in particular is that the people in the poorer countries where we work, places like Peru, the Philippines, Myanmar, Pakistan in particular, where even before the coronavirus crisis, life was very difficult for the vast majority of people. And many of them are engaged in survival, even in normal times. So the past 6 months has been particularly challenging in countries like that, where people are highly restricted with regard to their work, with regard to being able to earn a living, provide for their families. So that has been a huge challenge in our poorer countries to try to, to see so many poor people who up to 6 months ago held out a little hope that they could, move out of the poverty trap. Right. And now this last 6 months has really set them back and made so many destitute.
Yes, yes.
People who own a small little business but can no longer, open it because of restrictions or lockdown. And whatever little savings they had, those have been expended a long time ago. So extremely challenging. And of course, then access to healthcare in many of these countries, even in good times, is difficult. But particularly so now with so many people who are sick and in need of medical assistance. So it has really exposed the gap between the rich and the poor.
Yeah.
Somebody said recently that we're all in the same storm at this time, but we're in different sized boats. And some people, their little boat has already capsized.
All right. Wow.
And, they're struggling in the water with a terrible fear of drowning because, they don't have access to the medical help they need. They don't have the financial means to provide food for their families at this time. So it's a major, major challenge. And even when there's a vaccine found, the challenge is going to remain, I believe, for a decade or more afterwards, because for many of these poor people, just to put back things together again in the simplest way is going to require an extraordinary effort.
That's true. That's true.
Lost everything. How do you begin again? So
that's right.
Very challenging.
It is very challenging. We've just about come up to the end of our time here. Be good to go on for another half an hour, but I probably won't be able to give them that time. So I have to, one thing I'd like to mention probably is in terms of ecology, and because Sean McDonough, one of our great Columban priests who's been working in this area of ecology for a long, long time, he's well known here in Australia. He's been here quite a few times. I don't know, would you be aware of other areas within the society that are working in this area of ecology?
Well, as you did say, Sean McDonough has been one of the forefathers. He's been one of the prophets of this era of ecological awareness. Father Sean McDonough was writing and speaking about this topic 40 years ago, when very few others even saw it on the horizon. And it came out of his own experience of working with tribal people in Mindanao, the Tiboli people, and seeing how these traditional people, their lives were being turned upside down because of the logging that was taking place by international companies. They were stripping the landscape and exporting the timber and leaving a moonscape behind, polluting the rivers and resulting in the livelihood of these tribal peoples being devastated, not just for one generation, but from here on. So Sean saw that, and that was his inspiration to create a greater awareness that if we want to work with the poor and father poor, we've got to protect their environment. Because if their environment is destroyed, their chances of having a healthy, wholesome life are gone.
That's right.
So in the last 5 years, thanks to Pope Francis' encyclical Laudato Si, Columban missionaries in just about every single country are actively engaged in promoting greater ecological awareness among the people we live and work. And seeing that we all, as a global community, have to come together on this. We can't do it piecemeal. It's a global issue, and we've got to tackle it together and collaborate together to make this work, not just for humanity in the here and now, but for generations to come. So to me, this is probably the most critical issue of our age, and the greatest missionary challenge we face right now is to come together, whether we're Buddhists, Muslims, Christians, Hindus, of no religion. We all share the same planet, and how can we make it a healthy, wholesome, common home for ourselves and for future generations? And I think there's no greater missionary challenge given to us by God, who created this wonderful universe and saw that it was very good and entrusted it to our care. I don't think there's any greater missionary challenge, a greater way we can show respect and reverence for the Creator than to take care of our common home.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. And as when you were talking there, you speak about it as a missionary challenge, not just for the Columban Society, but of course we have all our donors and our supporters who are also supporting our work. But that's also a missionary challenge for them and for the whole church, and indeed, really, I suppose, for the whole world, that we work together on that. So I'd just like to say thank you very much for all that you do for us as a Columban society, and we wish you all the best in the future for the time that you have left in Hong Kong.
Thank you, Trevor. But I'm very keenly aware that all that we do as Columban missionaries in whatever part of the globe, all of it is made possible only because of the faith and generosity of our friends and supporters. Without them, none of what we do would be possible. So I am always conscious that I'm doing whatever I'm doing, and my Columban colleagues, in the name of the wider church and in the name of all our generous benefactors.
Thank you very much for that, Tim, and God bless.
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you.